Hi there. Thanks for joining me. Today I'm going to be continuing our discussion on the Fourth Amendment and what constitutes a search and what does not constitute a search. We've gone over a couple different scenarios so far. The biggest thing to remember at this point is that the two tests that we're talking about are whether or not somebody has a reasonable expectation of privacy, and then that reasonable expectation of privacy has to be one that they subjectively hold and is one that society would objectively think is reasonable. And then the other test is, of course, the trespass test. Is the government trespassing into a constitutionally protected area, such as the home? Today we're going to be talking about what you're doing out in the open, what you're doing in public. If the police are tracking your movements out in the public, is that protected under the Fourth Amendment? I guess the short answer is no. And that even includes if you're doing something inside of your home that's illegal and you've got your window wide open and a police officer is, walking by on the sidewalk or drives by and just happens to look over and look inside your home and see what you're doing, they're not just going to ignore that. In that situation, what you're doing would not be constitutionally protected because anybody out on the street would be able to see that. But I think that's kind of a simple hypothetical, right? If you're doing something illegal in public where anybody can see it, that's not going to be constitutionally protected. So let's make the hypothetical a little bit more complicated. Now, let's say that I went to a bag store and I went to buy a bag, and I purchase the bag, throw it in the trunk of my car, and I'm driving home. Now, let's say that what I didn't know is that before I had gone in there, the police officers had gone in before me, and they spoke with the clerk. They said, "Hey, can we put this beeper or pinging device in this bag, and then when you sell it, leave it in there?" So there's this beeper device or pinging device that I didn't even know about that's in this bag that's now in the trunk of my car, and the police are recording my movements. So is that a search? Is that constitutionally protected? And the Supreme Court dealt with a similar case to this, not exactly these same facts, but a similar case where they said, no, that's not constitutionally protected. Even though the police officers aren't visually watching you, they're not following you in the traditional sense, your movements are still in public. And there's no invasion into a constitutionally protected area at that point. Now, maybe once I was in my home, the analysis would be different. But I think another important thing to remember about this is the police had consent from the store clerk to put that pinging device in the bag. So they weren't tricking the store clerk into giving me something that had this device in it either. And that raises another important point that relates to what we were talking about last time as well, where I was talking about the garbage that you put on the street. And it's called the third-party doctrine. Remember that if a third party is giving you something, or if you're giving a third party something, anything could have happened with it, with that information or that object, right? So I'm buying something from a third party, anything could have happened to that object before I bought it. Or if I'm giving information to a third party, they could do anything with that information. So another example would be, let's say I'm dialing a bunch of people on my phone. Well, every single number that I dial is going to be recorded by a telephone company. So if the telephone company then turns over all that information to the police, I don't have a reasonable expectation of privacy in that because the telephone company, they're a third party and they can do whatever they want with that information. I think where this third party doctrine comes up the most in recent times is with social media platforms and other technological devices that are monitored by big companies. A hot issue right now is like heart monitors and some of those health monitors that you have on like an Apple Watch or on your phone that are taking essentially your bio data, right? It's your information about your health, and then they have that information, what are they going to do with it? Well, some companies have policies that protect your data, but really, none of that's constitutionally protected. So thank you for joining me today. Again, this is a very, very small portion of Fourth Amendment search and seizure law. We'll continue this discussion. If you have questions about any of these things that I've spoken about, consult an attorney. I can only speak from my own experience and from what I've learned, and obviously I can't say that what I'm speaking about applies to every single situation. So if you have specific questions, contact an attorney. Thanks for joining me. I hope to see you next time.